let me say not only good morning, but you know what I love about Long Island leadership? Whatever the snafu is, we just continue and we roll on, right? So I know we've had some technical difficulties this morning, but here we are, and good morning again. And, you know, we started about 3.5 years ago on a very collaborative effort, actually the highest collaboration that we've really ever seen, quite frankly, with Suffolk County and the Suffolk County IDA and Stony Brook and the Regional Planning Association and James Lima Planning and Stony Brook and many, many more stakeholders to really look at what the Long Island Innovation Park looks like and really what the impact was not only in Suffolk County, but on Long Island and the region. And it was a wow. I know many of you have heard Joe and I talk about it before. You know, 55,000 employees, obviously largest in the Northeast, only second behind Silicon Valley, 14 billion in economic output, and it goes on and on and on and on. And the important piece about that, and the thing that we're most proud of, is what we've been able to accomplish, not only thus far, but the plans we have for the future. And that would not happen. And let me give you a quick example. So as we live through COVID, you know, we just use the park as a template, if you will, or a prototype, if you will, to push things out in terms of critical information. And I want to thank, you're going to hear from him in a minute, obviously, Suffolk County Executive Steve Ballone, because he and his staff, and particularly Natalie Wright, Lisa Black, Rosalie, who I know is on, and obviously Kelly Murphy, who has a special place in my heart, from the Suffolk IDA, really have been with us every single step of this way. So thank you, County Executive, in understanding the importance. So with the Health and Safety Initiative, and just recently a vaccination distribution initiative that allowed us to get 1,800 shots out, right, to employers. I mean, that's big stuff. That's big stuff. So thank you for that. Thank you to Joe Campolo. He leads this Long Island Innovation Park at Hauppauge Task Force. They just plowed through COVID, quite frankly, and just continued on with many of the things that we were doing in the park that you'll hear about this morning. We're excited about it. For those of you who are on that are in the park and occupants, we're here really for you, looking at additional resources that you'll see come down the pike. For those of you who want to do business in the park, as this park grows and sustains itself, there is an opportunity to do big business. So there's something for everybody. So I'm going to turn it over to Joe Campolo. Joe?
Great, thanks, Terry. Good morning, everyone. So, you know, let's talk about progress, right? Because this is something, like Terry said, we started to think about 3.5 years ago, and where have we gotten? And right now, the Innovation Park Task Force, which is comprised of myself, Terry, fellow HIA board members, Commissioner Natalie Wright, Kelly Murphy from the IDA, Supervisor Carpenter, Supervisor Wareham, Councilman Lohman, I think there's a representative from Stony Brook University. We meet on a quarterly basis to discuss the progress being made, and it is an amazing bipartisan collaborative effort that is focused solely on how to maintain, sustain, and grow the economic development coming out of the park. And so I will introduce the county executive in a minute, but I do want to thank the county, the town of Smithtown, the town of Islip, and everybody for really just understanding how important this is, and just working together and rolling up your sleeves. These folks are all on the calls. They're not staffing it out. They're all on the calls, rolling up their sleeves, doing the hard work to make sure that we're continuing to keep Long Island as one of the greatest places to work and live in this country. You know, they say that you don't learn anything useful in college. And when I was a student in Stony Brook 30 years ago, and I have just a couple of quick slides that'll take about 30 seconds. If somebody could pop up the PowerPoint. One of the classes I took had an urban planning component to it. Go to the next slide, please. And it was a book called Edge City by Joel Garreau. And what he was writing about, he's a Washington Post journalist, what he was writing about was the wave of redevelopment going on in the United States, where suburbs were no longer sustainable models, and this is 30 years ago, and instead they were going to become what they call edge cities, much different than inner cities, but places where people could work, play, and grow. Next slide, please. And I dug this book out of my memory. I was like, wait a minute, I remember reading about it, right? And it's what's an edge city. So I went and got the book and I took a look at it, and it's really fascinating because it's exactly what we're going through on Long Island here, and you know, it's creation of a new world. It really is a creation of a new world and a creation of a new planning concept. They're usually located close to highways, major transportation. Next slide, please. Specialized, right? They have businesses, entertainment, residences, shopping centers, so people can live, work, and shop without traveling too far. Next slide, please. It usually has 5 million square feet or more of leasable office space, 600,000 square feet of leasable retail space, has more jobs than bedrooms, perceived as by the population as one place, and was nothing like a city as recently as 30 years ago, all of which the Innovation Park has, right? Next slide. And 30 years ago, they identified on Long Island 4 edge cities: Great Neck Lake Success Area, Mitchell Field Garden City Area, Route 110, Melville, and Hauppauge. And it's amazing that here we are 30 years later, and I'm involved in a task force that's looking at how to take the second largest industrial park in the country and really make it into one of the leading edge cities here. So just really really cool stuff, and you can go to the end, Jen. I can take the slides off. Just really cool stuff. Well, look, I've learned so much. I've learned so much over these last 3.5 years working with all the folks on this call, and but it doesn't stop there, right? And one of the things we're going to talk about is I'm sitting here right now in my office looking at Islip MacArthur Airport. And Vets Highway's got a whole bunch of orange cones all over it with infrastructure going on, and we're going to hear from Supervisor Carpenter about how this is all coming together here at Islip as well. And you know, none of this can be possible without the support of the county executive here in Suffolk County. You know, Steve has been an incredibly good friend to HIA-LI. He's a personal friend. I respect him a lot because he rolls his sleeves up and gets things done. And you know, I want to introduce him. And the first thing I want to say to you, Steve, is thank you for your leadership during COVID. I got vaccinated at the county center at the Dennison building. It was amazing. It was incredibly efficient. The people were so good and respectful and friendly and polite to deal with. It really was just a pleasure. So thank you really for getting us through this. I couldn't imagine a year ago we'd be having this conversation, but here we are, and you guys have done a great job there at the county. So, ladies and gentlemen, I do want to introduce County Executive Steve Bellone.
Thank you very much, Joe. I really appreciate that, and thank you for the kind words. Really, those are directed at the team here. Supervisor Carpenter knows it well. We were on calls together every day for months during a period of time during the pandemic, which we are still in. But people like Lisa Black, Terry that you mentioned, and also Amy Keys, and the people on this call who right from the start, Rosalie Drago, the Commissioner of Labor, we stood up a business recovery unit immediately because we recognized that the pandemic was not just a health crisis, it was an economic crisis as well as a fiscal crisis. So she did an amazing job. Natalie Wright, Kelly Murphy from the IDA, I want to thank the entire team. But I'm glad you got vaccinated, Joe. I have to say, I did learn a little bit in college. I went to Queens College, which we at the time liked to call the Harvard of the CUNY system. So I picked up a couple of things while I was there. But I want to thank you for your leadership of this organization as chair of the board and now as head of the task force. You've done incredible work. I want to thank Terry. You are amazing. It is and has been always a pleasure to work with you. Thank you for your incredible leadership the entire time I've been here and beyond. You have been doing amazing things. And it's easy to be a friend of this organization. If you care about the future of Long Island, then you care about the future of the HIA and Innovation Park, because they are inextricably linked. And certainly the analysis that was completed underscored just how true that statement is. I want to just give a quick update on where we are with the pandemic. I want to thank the HIA for working together. You really were at the forefront in the beginning. You were the first ones out there saying, we want to be involved in educating our members, getting the information out to our members, and then when an opportunity arose to do vaccination. So we were very happy to be able to work together on that. But we are, as of yesterday, for the first time since before the second wave began back in the fall, we were below 2% in the positivity rate. So we were at 1.95%. Actually, when I got my daily report, they had rounded it up to 2%. I made them send it back and return it at 1.95% because that's significant. We're below 2%. We had been stuck in the 4% range for a couple of months, even while more people were getting vaccinated. So the fact that the numbers, we've moved off that plateau, the numbers are going down. We're back to being in the ones again, where we haven't been since last October. All a very positive sign that we are emerging from the pandemic after what has been a devastating year, more than a year now, 13 months, 14 months. We are recovering, and I am very confident that we are going to be coming out of this pandemic in a position to get better and stronger and build a brighter future for this region. And again, I think the HIA is at the center of that, and we've been proud to work together with you. The plans that you have for Innovation Park, and to support those plans in a real way through infrastructure investments. You know, we know how important infrastructure is to being able to grow the economy and to create jobs, not just the construction jobs it creates, but the economic growth that results from the investments in infrastructure. And we're actually seeing a very positive sign about investments at the federal level in infrastructure, which is a very good thing. I know Supervisor Carpenter and I both over the last couple of decades has been talk about investing in infrastructure in a big way at the federal level, and it just never seemed to come to pass. But it appears that we are likely to see that happen this time. That is a very good thing for the region. But we've been doing it. The town of Islip, I know, we've been doing it in Suffolk County, investing in infrastructure, and investing in the Innovation Park is one of the best investments that we can make. And so that $80 million project, which is nearing completion, I know we have that one additional section we need to complete. We are determined to make that happen. And now some of the planning that has come out of the studies that the town of Smithtown has acted upon that would create that would implement an overlay district with mixed use development, part of the 21st century reimagining of HIA, of the Innovation Park. We are working with our sewer firm. We're working with them to make sure that the flows are going to be sufficient to address the needs of that future for Innovation Park. So we're working on that. We'll continue to work closely with HIA. But this is really about the future of our region, and there are real opportunities here. And I know, again, I want to point Supervisor Carpenter is somebody who has been very focused on how we build a better future in this region. And I would point to specifically her work at MacArthur Airport, Long Island's regional airport, that is owned and operated by the town of Islip. That airport has been undergoing a resurgence, and we've certainly tried to do our part to support the efforts of the supervisor there, but that airport is absolutely critical to the region's future. A region of 3 million people, Nassau and Suffolk County, nearly 3 million people, is one of the largest regions anywhere in the country. It's larger than many states in the country. So any great region needs a great regional airport. So I want to thank the supervisor for her work and her partnership on so many different levels. But I wanted to talk about another project that is a long-term project. But long-term projects don't happen unless you start planning for them. And this one is potentially transformative for the entire North Atlantic region. But I would say none more so than Long Island for its potential to help us grow the economy in the coming decades and really create a 21st century innovation economy that we're all trying to get to, and that the Innovation Park is at the forefront of. And so, Terry, I don't know if you have that slide available, if we could throw that up. So the project I'm talking about is the North Atlantic Rail Project, and it is a high-speed rail project. Now, we know that all across the world, nations have been building high-speed rail. They've been building a 21st century transportation infrastructure. China, for instance, has been effectively eating our lunch when it comes to building out that kind of infrastructure. You've got nations all over the world that now have invested in high-speed rail, and even Kazakhstan is planning high-speed rail. Now, that's where Borat is from. So I think it's a pretty good indication if Borat's hometown now is planning to build high-speed rail, and it's high time that America caught up and ultimately takes its leadership position where it belongs once again on building out the kind of infrastructure that is necessary for the world that we live in today. And if there's any place in the world, in the country, I should say, that it makes sense and that we should be building high-speed rail, it is the North Atlantic corridor. Now, there are high-speed rail projects that have started and are at various stages in other parts of the country, but they really, when you compare them apples to apples, don't compare to the economic potential that exists in the North Atlantic corridor, where you have 11% of the nation's population, you have 14% of our GDP, and 2/3 of the rail commuters in the country in this corridor. If we're going to build high-speed rail anywhere, if we're going to get back to doing big and bold things and once again take a leadership position in this world when it comes to infrastructure, then we need to do it, and we need to start it here. This is where it makes most sense. And for us, this would be an economic game changer and one that would help grow the economy in the region for decades to come. And, Joe, you mentioned us being an edge city, and specifically the Innovation Park. And in many ways, that's right, because we know that Long Island is effectively a huge cul-de-sac. There is only one way out, and it is oftentimes a very difficult and challenging way out. Because of that, there have been efforts to cross the Sound for decades, going back to the 1950s and Robert Moses. And those haven't worked, obviously, as we know. This project is different in that it is not talking about bringing tens of thousands of cars across. It is a project that would bring energy efficient, high performance, high speed rail that would connect the industrial cities across the North Atlantic and create one giant innovation corridor from New York City to Boston, with Long Island at its center, where you would place innovation assets like Brookhaven National Laboratory, Cold Spring Harbor Laboratory, Stony Brook University, little more than an hour's distance from Harvard, MIT, the Innovation Center in Cambridge. And imagine the possibilities of BNL scientists, Cold Spring Harbor, Stony Brook, working with those innovation assets, working with Yale just across the Sound in New Haven, connecting to industrial cities that would enjoy rebirths in terms of housing and economic development, and connecting those as well. It would create a connection to New York City that would reduce commuting time down to 30 minutes from Ronkonkoma, 30 minutes to New York City. The connection between New York City and Boston would be about a little more than 90 minutes. And from Ronkonkoma, you could get to Boston in a little over an hour. So imagine that. It would actually become quicker to go watch the Yankees beat the Red Sox at Fenway Park than it would to drive to Yankee Stadium to see them win the game, particularly depending on the time of day that you did it. Of course, that's a good reason for me to see a project like this happen. But the most important reason, of course, is this would supercharge the economy. It would be a legacy project for the region, and it would place the HIA literally 10 minutes from a high-speed rail corridor that would essentially be an innovation corridor for the entire Northeast region, and what that kind of investment would mean to the Innovation Park and to our region as a whole. As I said, this is something that you see happening just starting in other parts of the country. But quite frankly, from my perspective, if we're going to make investments in high-speed rail in America, we should be making them in the places where you'll have the greatest economic results. And there is no doubt, it's unquestionable in my mind, that this would be the greatest return on investment, would create ultimately over the course of a 20-year development, would create millions of construction jobs, and then ultimately tens of millions of jobs created along the North Atlantic corridor, spurring economic growth in the entire region. And, you know, we've gotten so used to, I think, in the country that, you know, the idea of doing big things is just something we don't do anymore. And that is not America. That is not the country that I know and that I love. And I am excited by the idea that we are really thinking about doing big, bold things again. It's about time. We should not be in second place to places like China in any regard. And I think a project like this is transformational for the country, is a really project of national significance, but it is transformational for our region and doable. So I wanted to highlight that because I think obviously the HIA again is at the forefront of innovation efforts in the region. And, you know, this is really a great marriage between a big, you know, legacy infrastructure project and a industrial park that, as Terry, you noted, is the second largest in the United States. So, Joe, I'll turn it back over to you. Happy to take any questions if anyone has any. But again, want to really thank you and Terry and everyone at the HIA for all your support, and to all of my colleagues for their great work as well.
Yeah, thanks, Steve. And that's super, super exciting news. Really, that's so great to see and so much needed. You know, I do want to say to you and to Supervisor Carpenter and to any other elected official that we've worked with here on Long Island. You know, all the noise we hear in Washington, all the noise we hear in Albany doesn't exist here on Long Island. You guys have been, I'm a skeptical constituent here in America, right? I'm not sure that people really work for a living sometimes when they're elected. Your team and Smithtown's team and ISUP's team, boy, they have rolled their sleeves up, Steve, and worked so hard with us to get this done. They've been straight, they've been direct, they've given us answers so that we can plan. It's been really a great thing, and the folks on this call should know that day in, day out, that's what's going on here in the county and those towns. So thanks again for all your help and your leadership. Because it's making a difference. It's really making a difference. We're seeing things come alive that 5 years ago we would have never thought could ever happen, and this high-speed rail is one of those.
Yeah, Joe, thank you. And I just let me add to your point. It's not that way everywhere. I think that's exactly right. We are fortunate. People like Supervisor Wareheim, Supervisor Carpenter, who are thinking about the future, are thinking about where are we going from here and what do we need to do and build to create a not just a better present, but a better future for decades to come and beyond. And, it doesn't exist everywhere. And so it's really a pleasure to be able to work with people like that.
Great. Thanks, Steve. Thanks for your time.
Thank
you know
you.
how busy you are, and
Thank you,
we
Tony.
appreciate it. Yep. That's great. So we'll move on to the other part of our program with our distinguished panel here. We are proud to have Supervisor Angie Carpenter join us, Peter Hans, who's the Director of Planning from the town of Smithtown, and James Limo, who's the author of what we affectionately call the Limo Report here in HIA-Ville. Angie, I want to start with you because I said in sort of my opening remarks, I'm in my office is in that ugly green building that's right at the entrance to the airport, right? And we've been here for 10 years. And this concept of an edge city, so you have the Innovation Park, and now I'm down here and I'm watching it all start to come alive with the airport, and then you got the Ronkonkoma Hub, and then you got the Foreign Trade Zone, and you got all this space here. So talk a little bit about what is going on at the airport and all this sort of infrastructure that you guys are doing here, because it's really, I think as Steve said, having this airport here is super important to our economy, to our quality of living, and it seems like a lot's going on. So talk about that a little bit. You're on mute. Angie, you're on mute.
Okay, great.
Yeah, there you go.
I understand that Kelly had a 9:45 hard stop, so if she wanted to come on, or has she left already?
She jumped. I would have had her. Yeah, okay. I would have had her come on, but she jumped. Yep.
Okay, fine. Talking about the airport and hearing you say about people have this perception that people that are in government don't necessarily always work, whatever. But I have to tell you, I consciously made the decision to come be the supervisor. It wasn't like, oh, I think I'm going to run for that office, because there was a vacancy and they reached out and asked if I would consider coming. So I left a position as the county treasurer to come here because I felt so strongly. I mean, first of all, it's my town, obviously. I live here and have for many, many years. But the challenge of seeing things that could be better and being in a position to help make them better was just something I couldn't resist. And the airport was at the top of that list. To see an asset like that airport so underutilized, and over the years it's had its challenges, certainly the dynamics of the ever-changing airline industry, the economic downturn in 2008, the consolidation of airlines, we lost service at MacArthur because of a consolidation, because they lost their gate in Washington, so we lost that. But the opportunity to see it grow, even during this whole awful pandemic year, there have been some positives that have come out of that. We at the airport, and I can't say anything about it without acknowledging the leadership of our commissioner, Shelley Rose Arkin, and Bob Schneider, the deputy commissioner, who together have many, many years of airport management experience. And that is the difference. Putting people in those kinds of key positions who have the experience. And we weren't jumping at every opportunity for an airline only to have them pull out 6 months later. when an airline shows interest, and we are constantly doing air service development, we review their financials. We want to make sure they can be profitable, that it works for both of us. And Frontier has been a tremendous success story. Obviously, Southwest, who has been there over 20 years now, and Frontier coming on board, despite the fact that they were hit with the pandemic not long after they started service at the airport. But during this year of pandemic, Frontier has announced that they're going to commence nonstop service to Las Vegas later this year. Southwest has announced and is already booking flights to Nashville starting in June. So that really says something. And we were at the forefront during the pandemic. We didn't just sit back and say, oh, I guess we're going to have to close. We were open every single day and immediately installed this CASPER technology, this continuous air filtration system that removes 99% of the pathogens from surfaces. But we were the first airport in the world to do that. We were the first airport in the country to install Silver Defender, which is a film that you put on high-touch areas. So what does this all mean? It means that we're saying to the traveling public, we care about you. We want your experience to be safe. Everybody's always said the customer experience at MacArthur is unparalleled. We just need more service, and we are diligently working on that. And because of that, there's an excitement and an energy, and you're seeing development happening around that. To be able to be positioned so closely to the rail and the highways. I mean, Amazon is putting a warehouse in over on Betts Highway. So that's all very exciting. And again, despite the pandemic, our planning department was totally operational in a different fashion. A lot of things had to be done online. We had drop boxes so that people could drop plans off without having to come in the building. But we did not skip a beat. You know, projects have been approved in CI, which is a stone's throw from the industrial park. 87-acre tract of property was sold. Steel Equities bought that in partnership with the Marcus organization. They are developing those 87 acres into 354 residential apartments, high-end, with all kinds of amenities, right there on Carlton Avenue, 2 hotels, the ballpark, 2 courthouses, and just a stone's throw away from the downtown area of CI, which is, you know, almost adjacent to the industrial park, where we received $10 million from the state of New York for the downtown revitalization project. Again, everything kind of came to a little bit of a grinding halt during the pandemic, but we kept moving along, working with the county. We're going to be able to hook up sewers, and that is a tremendous, tremendous plus. The kinds of uses you can get in when you've got access to sewers opens the whole, you know, idea up, where an RFP is on the street now for mixed-use development adjacent to the railroad. So again, a lot of exciting things happening. And what's happening at the industrial park is just huge. And we are so pleased that a part of it, albeit not a large part, but a part of it is in the town of Islip. But your park is adjacent to the town of Islip. And what happens there affects us and vice versa. And we're just so excited to be a partner, to be on that task force, to do anything we can to see the park thrive, not only survive, but thrive going forward.
Yeah, and look, what you've been able to do, Angie, and really thank you for coming in and for your service as the town supervisor, because it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable what you've been able to accomplish. I mean, before you were the town supervisor, that airport was dead, right? It was just a ghost town. And now, even with the travel restrictions during COVID, it's been much, much more lively than it ever was prior to your term. So your team and you have really done a great job in this area, and it's going to be interesting. So the high-speed rail system that Steve was talking about, that's 30 minutes from Ronkonkoma to the city. It's going to be interesting to see how that impacts the airport as well, right? That's going to be super cool to see.
Well, we'll be another train to the plane.
Right, it's a train to the plane.
Opportunity.
It really is, and it's a
Yep.
it's a smaller. It's the difference between flying into West Palm Beach and Fort Lauderdale, right? People will have MacArthur Islip Airport as an option, and it's really super cool stuff. And this has all come out of you guys just rolling up your sleeves and doing hard work. And we the business community really appreciate when our elected officials work so hard. Really, we really do. And you know, just so everybody knows, Angie's on every one of our task force calls herself. She's taking notes. She remembers all the points we're covering, and we have open discussions. It's really great. You know, sewers. I've learned more about sewers than I ever thought I ever would as a lawyer. But it seems that that's the you know, the holy grail here on Long Island are sewers. And James and Peter, I want to loop you guys in at this point of the discussion, because I want to talk about the innovation park. So we all know the biggest issue is sewers right now. That's sort of we're waiting on. But James, talk about and folks, just so you know, James Lima is the planner who came in and really looked at the park and put together an opportunity analysis and said, you know, he was like an Imagineer at a Disney, and he said, you know, imagine this is what could happen here, and now we're moving forward, getting it done, which is super cool. So James, that's got to be somewhat really satisfying for you, right? But talk about the process and your perspective.
Sure. Good morning, everyone. It's great to be back. I feel like we've just kept this roadshow going, which is exciting, and grateful for Terry and the team to keep advancing this. Just a quick recap. So our report in 2019 had 5 high-level economic development strategies to facilitate business growth, to attract and retain knowledge workers, to strengthen training and workforce development, promote innovation and technology transfer, and connect businesses, government, and institutions better to one another. And then it looked at 9 clusters for Long Island to focus on expanding what was really a deficit, which is the tradable sectors where we make things and export things to outside markets as opposed to local services. Long Island has 77% of its workers in local services. So we've got to get that number up. As Joe mentioned, the park itself significantly outperforms that at 58% or more. But 9 key sectors, so aerospace, biopharma, business services, construction, distribution, education, financial services, food processing, IT, and equipment. And then it's worth looking at, you know, the American Rescue Plan and the American Jobs Plan as currently proposed are very well aligned with all the things that we've been saying, and I'll get to that in a second. But when you think about the fact that it's focused on broadband and digital infrastructure, energy and environment, housing, human services and community facilities, transportation infrastructure, small business, manufacturing and supply chain, R&D and technologies of the future, and workforce development. It's like an unprecedented amount of capital flowing, you know, through our economy, and it's an enormous opportunity. So we looked at a couple of specific areas, right? But before I get that, let me just mention the White House issued a report card state by state, and it identified the greatest areas of need. And so for New York State, it said, you know, the infrastructure suffers from systemic lack of investment around roads and bridges, public transportation, energy, resilient infrastructure, housing, manufacturing, drinking water, veterans health, clean energy jobs, broadband, and manufacturing. So again, all of the things that we've identified are so well aligned. We said there were 2 things that could be transformative. One, create an innovation hub within the park to attract more talent and investment. So identify opportunities to build physical and social infrastructure that fosters a sense of community, exchange of ideas. So a place to do a black box theater recording center for a TED Talk, to have a career fair, to have a beer hall and coffee bar, the kind of industry social meetup spaces that you see at the Cambridge Innovation Center, or even at in these other innovation districts around the country. And the other is, as one of the biggest job hubs in the whole region and the biggest on Long Island, you need better connectivity and accessibility. A transit desert can be an opportunity desert. So how do we invest in transit infrastructure as well as other mobility improvements for the park to make the park more accessible to more people? I think those are key areas to make some broader structural improvements that can really tap into the flow of capital in ways that will build on the work that you've been doing in the time since we've issued our reports.
Yeah, it's great, and really it's been so unbelievably educational. You literally introduced the concept of tradable sectors here on Long Island, which was something we had never been talking about before, and now I feel like it's something that everybody's talking about, and that's been an incredible paradigm shift as we look at not every job, not every good, not every service is created equal, right? And that balance of tradable industries and tradable sectors is so important to a robust economy. So,
well, and one thing we see throughout the country is places that have national labs, which have extraordinary amounts of federal money for R&D. There's a seeming inability to create the commercialization of technological innovation happening behind these gates, so that local job creation and innovation is spurring entrepreneurship and more small, medium, and larger size companies. How do we get more tech transfer to happen based on the kind of continual R&D and the kind of talent attraction and production you have in the universities and research centers? You are a talent machine. Every year you're pumping out all of these graduates from all of these world-class institutions. How do we get more of them to stay, because there are good paying jobs that are about more tech transfer and innovation?
Yeah. So Peter, I want to turn to you. So since Supervisor Wareheim took over and has been a great friend and partner to the Innovation Park, I affectionately refer to him as the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, as he's always scurrying around looking for projects and things to do. But it ultimately falls to you as the Director of Planning, right? And so talk about your perception and experiences on all this, because I can only imagine when we proposed and started advocating for housing and apartments in the park and all these other things that James's study came out with, you must have kind of scratched your head a little bit. So talk about that from a planning perspective, and then all the great stuff you guys have been doing to support us, because it's really important people understand that.
Thanks for having me. Supervisor, he's definitely a ball of energy. I've been here for 25 years, so in the past 3 years, we've kind of went from, going 20 miles per hour to 80. But anyway, he hears a good idea. He wants to run with it. So in 2018, the very first thing, he just took over in January of 2018, and he said, we're doing the master plan. The master plan hasn't been done here since 1960, and he says, we need a new one. So, and in the same time, James Lima, with his report, had a lot of great ideas, and rather than wait until our master plan is complete, which we anticipate by the end of this year, he's been taking ideas out of it and saying, we've got to run with this. One of them was the mixed use ordinance, and improving infrastructure in the industrial park. So there's a lot of things, if there's an opportunity, the current town board and the supervisor, they just want to run with it. Angie had mentioned the sewers. That's a big thing, not just for our industrial park, but for our downtowns. We're trying to do that in Kings Park, Smithtown, and St. James. Kings Park, we hope to have running start construction this time next year. St. James, we don't have a plant, but the pipes are in the ground. The industrial park, about 80% is complete, or almost everything east of Moreland Drive. Spoke to Suffolk County DPW last week, and they're hoping to finalize a pump station at the NARDA site and have that under construction about this time next year with completion by 2025. That's important, as everybody knows, and we've heard it several times today. Without sewers, it's really hard to develop. So, yeah, it's
Hey,
been
Peter, let's
interesting.
talk a little bit about, Peter, let's just talk a little bit about sewers, right? So we get on these panels and a lot of panels and people say, well, we need sewers, but talk about why. Talk about why and what that entails and why it's so unique and challenging here on Long Island, because I don't think people really understand how critical sewers are and how difficult they are to plan for sometimes.
All right, just as an example, in most of our downtown businesses, people look at Smithtown and say, why can't we have more restaurants and bars? A lot of buildings, they're all in cesspools in our downtown. And Suffolk County Health Department regulations, they have different requirements for different uses. So if you have a dry retail store, there's very little wastewater going into a cesspool. Whereas if you have a restaurant or a medical office, the sanitary flow requirements are much higher. So you have let's say a closed down retail store on Main Street and you want to convert it to a bar or a restaurant, something like that. The first thing you do is you go to the health department and the health department says your property's too small and it can't support the sanitary waste for that building. We have something called the transfer of development rights, where you can buy a piece of property and sterilize it. However, it's only going to give you double density, which generally isn't enough. So there's a real outcry in our 3 downtowns to get sewers in. Not only does it allow you to get more wet uses or uses that are in higher demand, but it also allows you to put other amenities, apartments on second floors of buildings. So right now we're very restricted as to what we can and can't do in our downtowns. The same thing applies for the industrial park. The areas that are not yet sewered, if you have a major warehouse building, again, a warehouse is a very dry use. There's not a lot of wastewater going into the ground, as opposed to an office building or an R&D lab or a pharmaceutical company. So the western portion of the industrial park, let's say like where Liberty Moving is, I mean, that's a very dry use. It's a large warehouse space and there's not a lot of water going into the ground. But if you wanted to convert that building, let's say to an office or a pharmaceutical company, you'd probably have a lot of difficulty if it's not on a sewer because of the wastewater generation.
Yeah, it's really important. And Peter, I want to thank you because you've always been such a good support system. This is kind of the second time we've done these overlays in the park, and you and the town of Smithtown have been great. So, Supervisor Carpenter, you've been very active in the Long Island community for your entire career. Here we are coming out of the pandemic. What do you see as very positives going on right now, and what do you see as the biggest challenges here on Long Island we have right now?
Well, yes, thank God we are coming out of it, and thank you for recognizing the county and its efforts with the vaccinations. I know we worked closely with them and were able to get a few hundred people, staff vaccinated, and working with Good Samaritan Hospital, we were able to book over 2,000 appointments of people that met the threshold categories. And as that was happening, you could see people, relaxing a little bit more, feeling a little bit more comfortable going out, going to restaurants. And, that's a sector that has been so adversely impacted throughout the pandemic. One of the positives that I think that has come out is that we've had people embrace technology that probably never would have otherwise. We've gone from a generation of boomers to Zoomers, and that includes seniors. And so it's connecting people a little bit more than they might have otherwise. But it was an interesting statistic that was in Newsday yesterday, I believe it was, about the fact that the businesses in New York City it looks like only 22% of them are going to be requiring their employees to come back to the office. So what does that mean for us on Long Island? What does that mean for the industrial park? I think it's a wonderful opportunity. I think it may be, stretching and putting more of a demand on our services so that our concentration on addressing our infrastructure needs are more important now than ever. I know that we've, beefed up our paving budget. And, you think, oh, well, what does that matter? It does matter. People don't like going down a road and hitting bumps and blowing out tires when they hit potholes. But we've got about 9 million in there for paving this year. And in the last number of years, we've tripled the paving budget. And, that investment in infrastructure, signals to people a confidence that they should have in citing their businesses here, coming to live here. That those subliminal messages, I think, are very, very important. And with coming out of the pandemic and people getting vaccinated, again, to mention the airport, right now, as we were speaking, I had a message pop up on my email on the screen. Southwest is advertising their Nashville flight, $116 one way to go to Nashville. What an incredible weekend opportunity that is. It's a great, great city, a lot happening. And right here from our backyard, you can, go off on a Thursday, evening and come back Sunday night. And it's really great. And all of that keeps things moving and humming. And, whether it's the taxi companies that have taken a hit, it's all very, very important, all of it happening at once. And one thing that I'd like to reinforce that the county executive said, it is so important for all levels of government to be working together. And I know that I enjoy such an incredibly good working relationship with the supervisor of the town of Smithtown and Rich Schaefer from Babylon and Ed Romaine from Brookhaven. And that's so important. We've been addressing issues regionally. We re-energized and activated our Supervisors Association. And, so that we can be talking with one voice when issues confront us. And the very latest one is the legalization of marijuana that the state just passed. We had a call yesterday. There are so many things that are unknown about it, and how we're going to proceed and how does that affect those in the workplace. There's a lot happening.
Yeah. That's going to be a whole nother panel discussion, I think.
Oh, absolutely.
So the Nashville, I see a lot of girls' weekends. So maybe what the town might want to do is start selling female cowboy boots in the gift center there in the airport, because I think there's going to be a market for that. That's going to be great trips. It really is going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, I'd just like to add, I already purchased my tickets for 4th of July weekend.
Great.
You got a sale. That's great stuff. But I think you touched on something else, Angie, that's super important. And this is something you and Supervisor Wareheim and really on Long Island did all during COVID. Was you didn't hide from it, right? You were out there trying to instill confidence.
Absolutely.
And when you see the reinvestment by the local municipalities, it gives you confidence. It gives you confidence. Like, all right, we're not running out of money yet, so let's keep moving forward, right? That's a really important thing for us to see.
We were very fortunate. We have a AAA bond rating, and we're in the throes now, hopefully, of having it reaffirmed. It's been reaffirmed 6 times. It was one of my first initiatives to get that bond rating upgraded. And it is so important because when you do go out to invest, your rate of borrowing is almost de minimis. I mean, we did a refinancing of $6 million worth of debt, and we paid 0.29%.
Wow.
I mean, like nothing,
Yeah.
So we've just, with the support of the town board, we're finally moving forward and doing some major renovations on Town Hall. We're replacing, the roof. I mean, it's like every time it rains, it's leak central here. People are scurrying around, ripping up carpet. It just doesn't make sense. The cupola is deteriorating. It's a historic landmark. And that too is, I think, you know, uh, sort of generating activity, economic activity into the local, you know, vendors that have an opportunity to do this kind of work that maybe haven't been all that busy this past year. So, you know, that too is exciting for us.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, James, I want to turn to you. So I know when we were going through the process of the various reports, right? Getting local municipal buy-in and collaboration was, you know, was something that we were curious to see how that was going to work, and it's been spectacular. It's really just been incredibly spectacular. We get nowhere without that, right? And you know, I want the folks looking at us right now to understand how lucky we were to get you to work on this project, right? Little old Suffolk County here. You've worked on some tremendously huge and cool projects. You're very well known. So talk about some of the other projects that you worked on and how it related to the challenges we see here at the Innovation Park and how you think the progress is moving along here with our project.
Very kind, Joe. The challenges are similar and really amplified now with this convening technology we have in so many ways. If place and our experience of place was important before for where we would choose to work and decide with our families where we wanted to live, it's even more important now because we actually don't have to live near where we work. So it's an enormous opportunity. I think it's a great opportunity for Long Island, which has always struggled with, you know, the mediocre commute options for getting into the central business district, you know, in New York City. So I think now we can still be connected to and plugged into those job opportunities, but we don't actually have to be there. So that's great. We have worked on projects for some of the big tech companies in Silicon Valley where, you know, they would speak about a misery index where the commutational times because of regional traffic were just choking. And so it was really important to think about more housing choices at all different price points, but also different housing types close to the job centers. Again, that was at that time. I think that is still true, particularly for a manufacturing hub where you don't have the option of being remote. And so I think the work that's been done, and you know, may have hit a hiccup here and there, but I think longer term, like focusing as the entire island leadership has of really taking better advantage of its commuter rail network, its transportation network, and finding transit-oriented development opportunities to create more options for young professionals, for empty nesters, for others for whom having a single family house in a more suburban environment is not necessarily what they're looking for. So like diversifying that product has been great. It's also exactly what the vast capital markets is looking for. As an asset class, high quality, amenity rich rental apartments is a very attractive investment opportunity. And so I think Long Island's very well positioned and has been taking advantage of that. So I think those are important. But again, the quality of work life experience and our desire as human beings to connect is not going to change. And so I don't know about you, but I am tired of being on Zoom. And I'm on my first business trip in a long time in Eastern Tennessee, where they've been enormously successful at getting advanced manufacturing, Japanese electronics and other tech transfer, but they lack attractive placemaking. And so, you know, we're trying to help them think about quality of life improvements around that. But I think more and more you're going to see people thinking about that innovation hub and how a social center, a social glue for the people who are working hard in the park but want to come together and exchange ideas and trade stories and see who's doing what kind of entrepreneurial work or what venture capital is available for certain kinds of initiatives. there isn't that kind of social glue in the park. And we've talked about, how important that could be to tie in for job training and career events and industry specific convening.
Yeah, and I share, first of all, Angie, I love, we went from boomers to zoomers. I'm going to use that because I think it's great, and I am all zoomed out. Did you have something you wanted to add to that, Angie?
I just wanted to, pick up on what James was saying and all of the exciting, things that are happening and the changing needs of the population. People just aren't wanting the big house any longer. There is a need for high-end rental and keeping people here on Long Island so that they're not feeling compelled to relocate to the Carolinas or Florida. But that brings a whole other challenge, and that is to educate the public onto why this is so important. And just because we're, considering, putting residential in the middle of an industrial park doesn't mean we're going to be Queens or, Manhattan. People are afraid. So many of them moved out from the city for the quality of life that Long Island offered, and they are holding on to it for dear life in some instances. And I see that with projects that are just so right and so appropriate, and people come out, they just fear change. And, I think it's incumbent upon us to get out there and really educate the masses so that they do embrace these, because 9 times out of 10, even the project that had the most, vociferous opponents, after it's all said and done, say, wow, I don't know why I complained. It's really nice. Or, whether it's an assisted living in Sayville that people fought left and right, and one of the fiercest opponents, it happened before my tenure here, but one of the fiercest opponents was online to get his mother in there after it was built. So, I think we have an obligation to kind of educate the public.
Yeah,
Because
and
we can't raise taxes. We can't raise taxes. So the only way we're going to sustain ourselves is to have appropriate community supported development. So in order to get the community to support it, we've got to educate them.
Yep, and that's a great point. And that's certainly at HIA-LI, Angie, that's what we're all about, is trying to get residents and business owners and educated and have them educate their people so we can all grow together. Peter, I want to turn to you, and I sort of opened up with this epiphany, of studying Edge City and the transformation of suburbs into these edge cities, which is exactly what's going on here, on Long Island, and housing is an issue. So at our last Innovation Task Force meeting, we were talking about a Wall Street Journal article that was indicating what James was talking about, and that is in Silicon Valley, where it's high tech, right, and you don't have to physically be there. Many of those offices are not reopening or requiring their employees to be back there. And what that's doing is driving down the purchase price of homes surrounding Silicon Valley because people don't need to live there anymore, right? Here on Long Island, we have a different phenomenon going on right now. It's like a double whammy insofar as when COVID hit, everybody went from the city out to the burbs here, right, to their homes. The housing market's been driven up, and that makes a bigger shortage of affordable housing. And in our park, it's not highly tech-driven. There's a large concentration of biopharma and manufacturing that need physical people there, right, which means we need affordable housing to keep the workforce. Mm-hmm. And that's how this whole thing sort of has been gaining steam. So talk about that from your perspective as well, because that's got to have completely changed over your tenure as the director of planning there.
Sure. I mean, just before the pandemic, everybody, there was gentrification in the city. Everybody was going back. Everything was fine. And then we saw in the last year, I mean, everything here has been skyrocketing. You're getting into bidding wars over single family homes. There's only so much land we have. We can't create more land. We're an island, and we're probably about 96% developed here in Smithtown. So one of the things we can do is go up. But we adopted the mixed use ordinance last year. We have one application filed. It's been kind of inactive right now because they're trying to work out some issues possibly with the Suffolk County DPW and sanitary. We do have another developer that is interested in doing a project in the industrial park as well. Can't discuss too many specifics at this time, but it's not even just there. I mean, it's elsewhere in the town. Our downtowns, we're trying to promote the same thing. Multi-story apartments above stores, luxury condos. We've got a project that's underway in Wisconsin on Smithtown Boulevard. And again, what Angie said, practically every application we get, there's opposition to it. You know, the town does reviews, environmental reviews. Everything, the numbers work out, and yet, you know, everybody, they just don't trust the government, that we're wrong and it's not going to work. And at the same time, like Angie said, once it's done, you realize, okay, this isn't bad. This is something I can live next to. This isn't the end of the world. There was so much, you know, it's completely different and off topic, but I mean, we had so much opposition a year and a half ago, right before the pandemic, for a BJ's that was being constructed in Comac. And it was replacing a Macy's that was closing down. And you would have thought we were, you know, putting a nuclear facility there. And, but anyway, you know, it's under construction. We haven't really heard a peep since construction started. And then I think during the pandemic, everybody realized, oh, we need Costco and BJ's. That's where all the toilet paper is. So, yeah, you know, we're trying to keep everything moving here. We haven't missed a beat. You know, the town never closed down. We've been here every day, moving forward, trying to keep applications moving. We've actually taken advantage of a lot of the downturn, you know, with the schools being closed and a lot of people being inside. We were able to do a lot of investment in infrastructure. St. James was completely rebuilt. Supervisor Wareheim, being a former parks director, he, you know, that's his passion. He's renovated many, many parks in the past 3 years. In fact, today, that's one of the reasons he couldn't join is they're having a rededication of Flynn Memorial Park in Kings Park today. So again, like I said, we've been trying to really take care of infrastructure, and in the industrial park, all traffic signals are just about refurbished. If you look along New Highway, they've done major improvements over there with sewer pipes, but also the traffic signals. There's no more loop detectors. Everything's above ground. They're more efficient. They don't wear out from the heavy truck traffic. The whole interior of the industrial park has been replaced as well. So.
Yeah, that's great. Hey, James, I want to get you to weigh in on something. So one of the things we struggle with on Long Island, although I don't think it's only us, but it's a big issue, is, you know, the constituents here are impossible. They're just impossible. They don't want to develop, but they don't want to pay taxes, right? And what that has caused is stagnation for many, many decades here on Long Island, and really just an inability to plan correctly. But we find ourselves right now, and in all my time here on Long Island, you know, the cluster of towns that we have in Islip, Smithtown, Babylon, and Brookhaven, we have right now the 4 most experienced, qualified people ever to be in those seats. And thank God we do, right? Thank God we do, because they're all sort of past in their career really worrying about that, right? Because they know there's always going to be noise, and they just want to do what long-term is right for the region. And in these very high-profile projects that you've worked on, you must have encountered a lot of different, you know, a lot of different things that have gone on. And as we continue to migrate from suburb to ed city here on Long Island, sort of what's your perspective and advice dealing with that dilemma?
It's a great question. I agree. Yeah, leadership is the most important thing, and having people who really understand the nuance of all this. The issues are so common across different communities. There's a fear of change, of course, and so making it clear that you can have economic growth and preservation of community character. Those two things are not mutually exclusive, particularly in places where you have great transit infrastructure. So this next issue to focus on, which has been, tackled on Long Island and needs to continue to be like hammered at, is higher density multifamily housing near trains has a significantly lower burden on municipal services and a lower fiscal impact. It's just a fact. People tend to be younger, fewer kids, or empty nesters, much higher educated, higher disposable income. They're spending more in local community supporting small businesses, and they're less likely to generate the need for additional school seats. It's simply a fact. And it's true everywhere. It's true on Long Island. And so more density around our transit infrastructure is key. And then again, focusing on the need to keep investing in that transit and mobility infrastructure. I think those are, if you can get more progress on that, and I know there's just been so much just seen in the last decade, so much progress on that, but it is a process.
One of
So
the
were you
things
excited when you saw the county executive unveil the proposed high-speed transit system?
I was ready to talk about a shuttle bus, and he just took it to a whole other level.
Yeah, it's great. Wow, we're pretty much just about out of time. But what I want to do is just give you guys real quick to make any point that you wanted to make but didn't make, because I know that happens on panels sometimes. So James, I'll start with you, and then Peter, and then we'll let Angie get the final word. James, is there anything else you wanted to add that we haven't covered?
Workforce training got to work together, not in silos, in partnership across the whole island, not just the county. Focus on upskilling your workforce.
Yeah. Peter?
Yeah, the industrial park, it's the economic engine of the town of Smithtown. We're here to help any businesses that are looking to expand or need help with development. You're our priority. So feel free to call us if you need us.
Yeah, it's great partners there at the town of Smithtown, Peter, so we appreciate that very much. Supervisor Carpenter.
Well, likewise, ISLIP is here, open for business. We are very proactive about meeting with potential project developers to, before they invest in architectural renderings with a project that might not work, we tell them initially, like we'll sit down with them and review some of the ideas that they have. But one of the things that has worked really well with some of the larger scale projects where opposition might have been, set to derail it, I've recommended that the developer create a specific website for that project so that people could go get their questions answered in real time, real answers, not the back and forth that happens on Facebook or social media where someone puts something up there and they say, oh, I just read that it must be happening. Have that website specific so that people can go there and get their questions answered accurately and dispel the rumors that if that gets away from you, even the best project can wind up getting derailed.
Yeah, that's great point. So I want to thank all the panelists, and I want to ask Terry to jump back on to help out. Terry is an unsung hero in all of this. She never appears on these panels to speak. But the one thing that Long Island should know is 24/7/365. Terry is there banging away, doing what's best for the members, for Long Island residents, and for the innovation park. She really is just a giant here on the island. It's no doubt that I adore her, but our relationship grew out of hard work. We grew out of the fact that we both realized, hey, we love this place, and let's roll up our sleeves and get stuff done. So Terry, I'll turn it to you, and thank you really for all of your service in all of this.
Oh, thanks, Joe. Back at you, huh? Back at you, right? So, you know, it takes a village. So, and this initiative is, I think, a prime example of that. So thank you all again. I mean, we've accomplished so much within the last 3.5 years, and we have so much more to accomplish. For the people that are, you know, still watching us, I mean, several things that you'll see come down the pike. We heard about sewers, right? So we'll continue to advocate for that expansion to really allow this mixed use. And what James talked about is the critical need for people to live, to work, and play, particularly in this innovation park, number one, the real possibility, number two, of a workforce training center. And working again with James and the Suffolk IDA and the Long Island Regional Planning Council to make that a true reality. Number three, post-COVID, that social meetup place. You know, we began to work on that plan, James, and then COVID hit, right? So, but we'll get back to it because it's well needed in this innovation park. And number four, you know, you will visibly begin to see many of the things come to fruition. Not only the shovels in the ground, but certainly, you know, the new name of the park will now have signage, and that branding is more critical than ever also to attract companies to come into the park. So very excited about all of it. As I said, does not happen just with one person. It happens with all of us. And we wish you all well. If you have any other questions, please reach out to us at the HIA-LI.